Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. See, it's always good when Keith and I make each other laugh right before we come on air with an obscure movie quote, because then we start the show with big smiles on our face. But we appreciate everybody being here. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to continue our big question. We're going to be looking at the Northwest Division. We'll take a look at all 5 of those teams and break down the big question facing each one of them. I'm really excited about this division. Some cool stuff to get into there. We'll talk about Tyrese Haliburton recruiting for the Indiana Pacers. Is it going to work? The Warriors in a standoff now with Jonathan Kuminga. What's going to happen there with his next contract? Plus, if we have time at the end, a little bit of scheduled nonsense. So a lot of stuff to get into today. Keith, I guess let's just start out with Golden State. With the Warriors, they do not want to give Jonathan Kuminga a max contract. Do you agree with this? Do you like? It's possible Jonathan Kuminga just has such a good season this year that next summer they just kind of give him the max anyway. It's kind of, the Cowboys not wanting to pay Dak. No. And then suddenly, okay, well, here's a ton of money. That could be the path that we wind up walking down here for Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think you also have if you're the Warriors, you have in your back pocket, you're a restricted free agent if we don't extend you now, and we can match. If somebody else wants to give you a max deal, guess what? We can match it. Now, that is historically proven not to be a great strategy because often in order to get a player to even do an offer sheet because they know where it's going to go, the other teams make it painful, right? They'll do upfront payments. They'll put in a trade bonus. They'll put in a player option on the end of the deal. But the idea then is, hey, well, at worst, 3 more years in Golden State, and then you can get out of there and move along. I always do that. I always say in Golden State like it's an actual place. That's the one that throws me off. And then I'm like, should I say like in the Bay Area and everything? That's completely got nothing to do with anything. It's just
no, I know what you mean. It's one of those things where it's like not quite technically accurate. Like,
yeah, it's not really a place.
Somehow it came up recently. Remember a few years ago during all the COVID stuff when the NBA's off season was like November, and we kept saying summer because we're so used to summer equating with off season and off season moves and all that kind of stuff. It was by the time the season actually started, then we got to a point where we had retrained ourselves. It's similar kind of thing where it's not quite right when you just say Golden State, but you just kind of go with it anyway. Everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah, I think I do, because I was like, that whole period of time was kind of when you and I fully relaunched the show. And I remember us repeatedly saying this summer, and then putting a caveat at the start of like several shows in a row. When we say this summer, we mean the off season. We know it's not happening in summer, and I'll be a happy snowman. So anyway, that was a dad joke for anybody who's seen Frozen 5 million times.
That was a good one
back in the day. So back to Jonathan Kuminga. That's the Warriors kind of have the leverage here because with any player on a rookie scale, first round rookie scale deal, it always favors the team because they can afford to wait it out. And you're absolutely right. Maybe Kuminga comes out and is a monster this season. I tend to think he may be. He had a really good year last year. And if he comes out and really plays really great, the Warriors may be in a spot where we either need to max him ourselves or we need to match a max offer. But I think they'd feel a lot better about that if it was after one more year where he's really, really good versus did he really take a leap, or was this a one-off year kind of going into rookie scale extension talks and now, where is this at? I think it's the latter, or the former rather. I think it was a really good year for Kuminga, and I think he did take the leap, and I think he's going to be that level of player moving forward. I talked about this in a recent show, but I can also understand why they're like, man, we're not super psyched about jumping in and handing a guy 200 plus million over 5 years because we just kind of started cleaning up our books a little bit. So I get the hesitation here. I also get, if you're Kuminga, like max or let's play it out and see where it goes. I'll bet on myself and we'll figure it out. And then my only fear becomes just don't get hurt. Like,
Yeah.
please don't get hurt, because I don't like that's the one where you have with the player. If he wants to bet on himself and he can be a really good performer, great. But it's the injuries that's often not in the players.
Right. Yeah. That's something that obviously you can't predict is going to happen, an injury, but you just have to hope if you decide that you are going to, bet on yourself, so to speak, that that it doesn't happen. Now, and one thing to keep in mind is that we've seen this now around the NBA where teams are starting to push back a little bit more on players wanting max deals. We're seeing it with the Brandon Ingram situation. You're seeing teams that are not willing to take on long-term money. A lot of that is the new CBA, but teams are just wary of having those long-term salaries on the books, and we're starting to see them push back. It's not. It used to be a pretty good player would say, "I want a max." Team says, "Here you go. Here's a max contract. Oh, you want one too? Here you go. You get one as well." Now we're starting to see them push back on this, and so it makes sense in the new environment, especially given, as you said, the Warriors, the things they've done to try to clean up their books, for them to say, you know what, if it's going to be a max anyway, let's wait. It's not going to hurt us much to wait a year, unless the
Sure.
worst case scenario is he gets, a trade kicker and a player option on the final year of the deal. Okay, so be it. We'll roll the dice and get another year of evaluating Kuminga rather than just handing him over a max deal right now. And I agree with you as well. Like, if you're Jonathan Kuminga and you just came off the season you came off, I'd feel this like I'm going to do it again. I'm going to be even better next year, and I'm definitely getting a max. So I'm not. The Warriors could say, "Hey, we'll give you slightly less than a max if you take it right now." And if I'm Jonathan Kuminga, I'm saying, "No, I'm good. Let's play this thing out and wait." So wouldn't shock me if he does wind up hitting restricted
Sure.
free agency next summer, and the Warriors are in the driver's seat. You just hope it doesn't go to the lengths of like a Isaac Okoro situation where here we are in September still waiting for resolution. But
Yeah.
with a guy that's worth if he's truly worth a max next summer, that probably won't be the case.
Yeah, if he's worth a max, he'll get that
We'll
offer,
get it.
because as much as there are not, there's only a handful of teams with cap space, I guess is the best way to phrase that. And even the ones with cap space next summer right now, and it's also very early, a lot will change. We'll see a lot more deals and things happen. But those teams, none of them project to be like, let's go right now. But Kaminga is 22. So he's a guy, if let's say you're the Nets, and I'm only using the Nets because they're a team that should have cap space next summer. He is young enough to say, let's throw a max at him, because if he develops, great. He's young enough to be part of whatever we're building here in Brooklyn into whatever our next team is. The challenge part of that also is Sean Marks has done this before, right? He's done the whole let's throw out not maybe maxes. I don't know if they're always max. I know Otto Porter, he threw out a max to Alan Crabb, Tyler Johnson. I don't think we're quite max deals, but I'm going to throw out these big things and force other teams to match if I want the player. And then the funnier part is he ultimately, I think, got all of those players eventually years later when it probably shouldn't have. But that's a whole other thing.
Right.
So with Kuminga, I could certainly see, the Nets or another team with cap space, maybe even the Pistons, right? If the Pistons were somehow to work their way into cap space. Again, they're not one of the teams that I project to have cap space. It's Houston. He'd be, maybe if Houston was like, we're going to move on from a couple of our other forwards. We're going to go this way with Kuminga. There's just definitely paths towards him getting that max offer. And then if you're the Warriors, you're going to figure it out. Last thing I'll say for the Warriors may be in a position where they look around and say, all right, you know what? We don't want to do it now, but let's say we're at the trade deadline and let's just Andrew Wiggins' contract is off the books. They'd be like, hey, now we're ready to give you a max because we're effectively replacing Wiggins' deal with one for you. So we're good with that. So there's still a lot to go here. I will also say this. It is September 12th. We're still over a month away from this needing to be done. Rookie scale extensions can go right up until the start of the year. We may see this one come in where, you know what, I took a little less than the max. They came up a little. I came down a little, and we got something done just to get it done. I'm not going to rule that out either.
There is some value. Like if I'm Jonathan Kuminga's agent, you mentioned the injury situation. There is some value to taking that off the table, to take that situation off the table by saying, hey, okay, max is about 244 million. Would it be worth it to go ahead and take 235 or something like that and get it done now? You're slightly below the max rather than take the max, next summer. And then what you're doing is, should you blow your knee out this year? Well, your deal's already in place, versus if you're betting on yourself and saying, no, I want the full 244, whatever it would be next summer.
Yep.
That's where there has to be a breaking point, obviously, where the Warriors come in and they say, well, if you want to do a deal now, we'll give you 150 million. Kuminga is going to say, no, thank you. I'm going to bet on myself, obviously, but there has to be, and this will be something that each individual player has to consider, but there is value to getting a deal done now before the season for Jonathan Kuminga. The question is he willing to give back any money in exchange for that certainty? Some players may say, hell no, I'm not giving anything back. I want the full amount.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want me to play through the season, I don't care. I'm going to play through the season. Others will say, yeah, I don't want to take that risk. Let's get the deal done now, even if it costs me a little bit on the overall value of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not going to give them anything like where you and I, when we come on here to break it down, we're like, holy crap, what an incredible deal for the Warriors, nor should he. But there's a lot of room between that and a max, right? There's a lot of room in there where there's a deal that makes sense for both sides. And maybe it's one where even like, I kind of like it for the Warriors. I'll be honest, I think anything less than a max is probably a win for the Warriors, just because I think Kuminga will deliver max value on his next contract. And if the Warriors go to a max, I'm certainly not going to complain at all. I'll call out the potential pitfalls of, you just got yourself out of a bunch of, rough cap years, but this is the kind of guy I'd be willing to go in for, just because I believe that much in him that he'll deliver that kind of value.
If you were the Warriors, would you try to limit the years at all?
No. He's 22. I want all of them.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
Looking at that contract for Curry, for Wiggins, like, what if you tried to line it up with those guys?
Yeah, I think because he's 22, I would feel really good of one of two things. Either as those guys age out and move on, Kuminga then becomes my focal point. He's now the guy we're orbiting everything around as a franchise, or we can trade him. We can get out of it because he'll just be entering his prime years at that point. He'll be 26, 27 in those last couple years. So yeah, I would feel very good about saying, let's move, on a full 5-year deal, knowing either he'll be our guy moving forward and we're going to build it all around him, or we can move him in a trade if we need to.
All right, let's jump over to the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Haliburton recruiting for the Pacers says it's not just him. Says he's not the only one recruiting, but it was a little bit refreshing. He said, and I quote, "Indiana is a great market. It's a basketball state. We've got a good thing going here. So if anyone wants to play with me, they'll have to come to Indiana. I'm not going anywhere."
I love it.
He's all in on Indiana. I want to be here. I want to be with this team. I want to be with this organization, and I want to bring players to the Pacers. This should be music to the ears of Pacers fans right now.
And every small market fan around, right?
Sure.
Of do it the right way and guys will stay. I mean, we've already heard Victor Wembanyama talk a lot about San Antonio is great. Like, I want to be here. Now, he's also got 3 more seasons left that he's definitely there on his rookie scale contract. So it wouldn't be very good if he was already like, I'm kind of ready to go somewhere else. That probably isn't going to play very well. So, but whenever any of these guys who are, he's got the max deal now. Haliburton doesn't need to say any of this. I mean, he could have just said, I'd love to play with other great players, and left it at that. But he, very openly said, this is where I'm going to be. I want them to come here to Indiana. I think that's great. And I think that's awesome. I think we have seen so many players in the NBA transcend the market size. It just doesn't matter like the way it maybe once did years and years ago. Like the ones I always go to, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook became global superstars in the world of sports playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, which worldwide, I don't know how many people could even find Oklahoma on a map, right? And would be like, I don't know, it's not New York, it's not LA, it's not Miami. So it's none of those places. Like, I don't know, it's somewhere in the middle. and yet they became super duper stars with that. Yeah, there are other opportunities that come if you play in a really big market, New York, LA, Chicago, sure, but at some point, it starts to, as I'm fond of saying, it all becomes like monopoly money. It's like, I don't like, well, why do I need another 50 million? I mean, easy for me to say I'm never going to make it, but guys become stars where they are if they're stars. And I think for Haliburton, this is awesome. And now my question is, you just locked into a whole bunch of long-term contracts beyond your own. So I'm not fully sure like where the idea of going out and recruiting a bunch of guys is coming from, but I still love the mindset and the attitude of, hey, I want to get it done and they want to play with me. They're going to have to find a way to Indiana. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be flexibility. Maybe there's a trade or something like that comes up, and a guy says, "Hey, I really want to go play with Tyrese Haliburton. I would request a trade there." Or if we get into MLE territory, sometimes you're going to find guys on a bargain. We saw a few guys even for veteran minimums that were bargains this year. Tyus Jones, I think was noteworthy. Gary Trent Jr. These guys went on minimum deals, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that max level star that's going to come play with Tyrese Haliburton financially. That may be kind of tough for the Pacers to work out, but he still can be a draw for other guys that certainly wouldn't have been there. That draw to Indiana certainly would not have been there pre Haliburton, but his style of play is very infectious. Players, I think, are going to flock to him and to playing in that system because they do play so fast and they put up numbers. So I do think that Haliburton's going to be able to make a difference here and make Indiana a more attractive landing spot for players moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. This is odd.
Oh,
sorry, from Chom's. Houston Rockets forward AJ Griffin is seriously considering stepping away from basketball. Griffin was the number 16 pick in the 2022 draft to Atlanta, then traded to Houston this summer. Sides are preparing for his departure from the game.
That's obviously there's details there that we're missing right now, but this is very.
I hope this
abnormal.
isn't anything awful. Please don't be. Oh man. All right.
I mean, stepping away from basketball at 21. That's this is obviously a major surprise. Not typically what you would see. I think I instantly think back to like Larry Sanders to when he stepped away from basketball. Is the situation like that? I don't want to just wildly speculate on what's going on, but clearly there must be something significant here that would be causing him to do this. And hopefully it's nothing. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to
just hope it's like, I just lost my passion. I don't want to play anymore.
Right. Yes. I think that's probably the best case scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It at this point, not something.
I'm looking at
worse.
Yeah. I mean, this is only his third year. So it's not like this is like a 10-year veteran where, it's anything like that. So yeah, I guess more detail to come. I would like that acquisition by Houston as kind of a flyer of, why not? Like, let's see. Kind of watched out in Atlanta, but they don't have a ton. They have 9 million forwards. They could use another like 2-3 wing, and I thought he was a nice pickup for them as somebody who could kind of do this. Let's cover it off because it's what we do here. His contract will go in full on the Rockets books. They've got a rookie scale team option for him for next season that presumably, if he's not going to play, they'll just decline. So he'll become to about 3.9 million this year. Yeah, 3.889 million. So call it 3.9 million. That'll go on the Rockets books as a dead salary, and they'll move into filling that spot, not filling it however they do it with that. The Rockets have plenty of clearance. They are 6.9 million under the luxury tax. So they're not no concerns there with even filling the spot if they need to. Just a little weird, we'll see. More details will emerge because they always do.
Hopefully everything's okay. But all right. I think we had kind of said everything we wanted to say on Haliburton. Why don't we?
I only had one more thing on Haliburton.
Okay.
It also is kind of nice when it is the point guard and one of the very best passers in the league saying, come play with me. Because maybe has a lot of influence over who gets the ball and how he's setting guys up for shots and the like. So
Sure.
that could mean a little bit more than if a big man is like, come play with me. Now, if it's Jokic, that's a different story because he's essentially a 7-foot point guard or 6 foot
Right.
10, whatever the heck he is, point guard. But yeah, but if it's a little different when it's the primary controller of the offense. And hey, you want to come play here? And I'll make sure you get 10, 15 wide open looks a night because I can make it happen. So yeah, just thought that part of it was fun too.
Yeah, when it's the guy whose job it is to pass the ball to other players for them for them to score, it does matter who that player really wants on the team. So, okay, let's get into our one big question segment. So yesterday we did the Pacific Division. Now we're going to do the Northwest as we work our way eastward, and that means we're talking about the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Wolves, the Jazz, and the Blazers. I think this is the only thing I would do in terms of how I would predict the final standings to finish this year is I would flip the Wolves and the Nuggets. And I think that's it. That's the only thing I would change in that order. Oh, I would go OKC, Minnesota, Denver, Utah, Portland.
Yeah, that's either way. I do think the Thunder will come away with the best regular season record. I think they are not only do I think they're the best team of these three teams at the top of the division, they're also the youngest. So I don't think they're going to be prioritizing quite as much. They will throw away the fourth game of a 4-game road trip just to get guys some rest because it's the second night of a back-to-back. Like we may see Denver and Minnesota do. I think the Thunder are going to be more inclined to push. Now they have been a pretty forward-thinking organization. They've not hesitated, especially with SGA when he has come up with some kind of injury to. Yeah, let's sit him. Like we're not going to rush him. We'll play through it. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that's where I'd probably be as well. Denver, Minnesota's very close. It could look an awful lot like this did, where it came all the way down to the not only the final day of the regular season, but the final game of the regular season. Because remember, everybody tipped off at the same time on that day in the Western Conference, and we had to wait it out to see where these three fell out.
So let's start with OKC. I think we both have them at the top. What's your one big question for OKC heading into the season?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take the very easy, obvious one here is how much do they play Hartenstein and Holmgren together? What does that look like? I think those who went to they're gonna start both of them. I think that's a little premature. I think there's a good chance Hartenstein comes off the bench. With that, I think we'll see Holmgren still start at the 5. I also think some of the hand wringing, or let me phrase it another way, maybe just hopefulness, because people don't want the Thunder to be so awesome. That Holmgren won't play as much at the 5, so this is actually going to hurt them. I think that's a little silly. I don't think all of a sudden these two are going to log 30 minutes a night together in the front court. I think it's probably more going to be somewhere in around the 10 to 15 minute range is about, the max they'll play together. And that may even be 15, maybe more on the high side. But that's what I'm curious about. Let's see. I think they've got pretty good lineup. Russ, I'm like running all my words together and creating new ones. They have pretty good lineup and roster versatility. That's what I was going for there. Where they can play a lot of different ways. And because they got Hartenstein, now they can play big, right? Where necessarily they didn't have that option in the past. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I agree. I do think they've got that versatility. I love their additions this offseason. Their big ones being Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. I'll just say this. You mentioned, are they going to play Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren together? My big question for the Thunder is, are they ready to take that step and now really run the Western Conference? Like they came in first last year in the West, but I think a lot of people still saw the Nuggets, the Wolves as the more difficult teams to deal with in the postseason. Is this the year that the Thunder truly ascend and become the big bad in the Western Conference? Because I think the potential is there. I think the additions that they made over the summer were things that they absolutely needed. And I think there's a very, very talented young team that could be a problem for a long time. So if, especially when you've got guys that they're already this good, and like SGA is still, he's not yet reached his ceiling. He's still on the upswing. Same thing with Chet. Same thing with Jalen Williams. These guys, all we can reasonably expect them to be a bit better than they were last season. So as they're all growing, is this team ready to become the final boss here for the Western Conference? I think they are. I think they are going to take that step. But a lot of that is a mental thing, in addition to being a physical on court, how you actually play thing. And so I'm going to be watching to see, do they have that killer instinct? Are they going to become, in a very, very compact Western Conference, if anybody is going to break away and become that team, I think it's OKC that has the best shot to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I'm maybe more there than you are right now. Just because I think they proved it. I think last year was the get into the conversation year, and this year is like I'm fully bought in on this team. I'm not fully bought in that they're going to the finals, because I think Denver could get there, Minnesota, Dallas. I'm gonna leave people out, and someone's gonna get mad and yell at me. But I think we've got a lot of really good teams in the West that could break through. But I certainly think the Thunder have a real chance to be that team.
All right, let's jump over to Denver. Denver, for me, it's real simple. It's just, can they still be a top tier team despite the fact that they've suffered these losses over the last couple of years, losing Bruce Brown, now losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They were the lowest volume 3-point shooting team in the league last season. Now, obviously, it helps when you've got Jokic to do the things that he's going to do. But the big question for me, for Denver, can you continue to thrive with the replacement guys that are coming in? Can Christian Brown step in for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and perform at a high enough level? Are they able to maintain their spot as a top tier team in the Western Conference? I think they can, but specifically losing KCP on a team that already doesn't shoot that many threes, and he is not just a volume shooter, but also an accurate shooter, that's going to put more pressure on some of the other guys. Michael Porter Jr. is going to have to step up. Jamal Murray, who just got the big contract, he's going to have to be good for them this season, not just kind of hit and miss. And then, of course, Jokic is going to continue doing Jokic things. But that's the big question. Can they withstand these losses that they've suffered in terms of their roster, replace those guys with new players coming in, and still keep on rolling as the Denver Nuggets? Or do they take a slight step back, which in the West could be doom?
Yeah, I mean, a slight step back in the West means you could drop to 5th or 6th or the playing tournament very easily. And still, we may not be like, oh yeah, they stink. Like, they may still be a very good team. You just slid back. My question's very similar to yours, just slightly different version. And it is, as guys like Christian Brown take on a bigger role in that, what happens to the rest of the depth for the Nuggets? Because Brown, I thought, had done a really nice job coming into their, for lack of a better term, 6-man. Because I don't think they had like your kind of traditional type 6-man. I thought he'd done a really good job being their like kind of number one wing off the bench that did a lot of nice stuff for them. Presumably he's going to start now. Who takes his spot? Can Peyton Watson take a leap offensively? Defensively, I think we know Peyton Watson is ready, but he get played off the floor in the playoffs because no one cares about him on offense. Is a guy like Julian Strawther able to come in and give them a real, actual, credible minute? What do Westbrook and Saric have to give them off the bench? What is that going to look like? That's where it all comes together for me, because for the Nuggets, the greatness of Jokic gives you, it just kind of gives you almost an extra chances you wouldn't have otherwise. But what you've done is, if your margins were like this before, I'll try to keep it on camera. Now they're like this. They're just tighter because you're missing guys. And for those only listening, like, I had my hands pretty far apart and brought them a lot tighter. Like, you're just now without Caldwell Pope. Is Murray healthy? Is Murray going to live up to the contract? All the things we talked about when we talked about his contract and all that. Where's all that going to go? So that's kind of my thing for Denver, is who's going to step up next, where when we're talking about this team months from now in the middle of the season, we're like, yeah, I guess all of our issues that we had or concerns, they're not really, they're fine, right? They're good to go. Who's going to be that guy or guys?
All right. I like it. I like it. All right, let's jump over to the Wolves. And my big question for Minnesota has to do with the big guy in the middle, Rudy Gobert. Minnesota has expressed love for Gobert. They want him to be part of their team for a long time, but he is extension eligible. He's got a player option next summer. He is 32 years old. He is coming off of a Defensive Player of the Year season. If he wants an extension, he's probably going to want a max or near max extension. And again, coming off a winning Defensive Player of the Year, he's got a good argument for that. But given the books that the Wolves have, given how much money they've got committed, given what's coming to Anthony Edwards, given what's coming, even, you've got Karl Anthony Towns as his salary keeps increasing, and you've got these other guys that you have on the books. Can they do that with Rudy Gobert, or do we ultimately see some tough decisions with, say, Naz Reid, right, who's in the same situation as Gobert, player option for next summer? Is there a cost to keeping Gobert, or perhaps a cost to keeping Naz Reid? Do you lose Gobert because of that? So I think a lot of the question marks about this team, I'm pretty confident what we're going to see from the Wolves on the floor. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a pain in the butt to play against night in, night out. I think their defense is going to be good. Mike Conley is still getting it done. I think this is going to be a very, very, very good team. Anthony Edwards continues his ascension in the NBA. But what happens with Gobert, that three-headed monster at the big position with Gobert, Towns, and Naz Reid, is that something that they can keep around, or does the salary situation force a tough decision from the Wolves sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I'm gonna tag on to that. First, I'm gonna give a thought/prediction. When we're talking about the Wolves a year from now, going into the 25-26 season, one of those three centers, Towns, Gobert, Reid, won't be on this team anymore. One of the three will be gone. It's crazy to have that much invested in one position. In Naz Reid, you're probably not paying him $15 million. Like, you're probably going to have to be in the 20s on him. Gobert may come down, but he's not coming down to he's not going to become your 15 million guy. And Naz Reid just becomes a 30 million guy. If that happens, then you probably will have both of them. But I don't think that's going to be how it goes. And that ties into my big question with the Wolves is, do they have, if we get to the trade deadline and they're like, we are right there, but we are X away. We are a bench scorer away. We are a backup guard, a backup wing. I'm not going to say center because I think we got that one covered, but we are X away. Can they go get it? Do they even have the ability? Here's why. Everybody knows the Phoenix Suns are insanely expensive. The other two teams people go to are Boston and Milwaukee. People know Minnesota's expensive. I don't know if people fully have grasped. Minnesota has the second largest payroll in the NBA. This behind the Suns. That's how expensive they are. They have more money on the books than the Celtics. Part of that is because the Celtics really, their big stuff hits next year when all the extensions kick in. But they're more expensive than the Celtics, more expensive than the Bucks. They are not that far off the Suns. And the big question I have is, do they have the ability to go make another move and fill it? Not only do they have the assets, can they go do it, but just will they get the go ahead to do anything like that? So we'll see. But as it stands, this team's going to be really, really good. They may not even need to do that. They may kind of have everything they need already.
Yeah, this is a team that is clearly on the rise. They've got the opening night matchup with the Lakers, the NBA putting them in the spotlight. I think obviously it's a good team, but they're going to have some very difficult decisions to make here moving forward. So we'll see kind of where all that lands. All right, let's jump over to the next team in the Northwest Division. Here is the Utah Jazz. Let's talk about Utah. When I look at Utah, as I'm pulling up their salary sheet here for everybody, when I look at Utah, my big question, and it's probably not the biggest question really facing the team, so I have a feeling you'll go a different direction here, Keith. But my big question for Utah, it's what is happening with Walker Kessler? What is this guy? What is he going to be here? Are you not? Because I think Walker Kessler is not super thrilled coming off the bench, which he did for the majority of last season for the Jazz, and rightfully so. This is a guy who played for Team USA summer before last recognized as one of the best young players in the league. Not that he was a starter or anything for Team USA, but he was on Team USA, and then comes into the Jazz and finds himself pushed into a bench role, and then has to play Summer League for Utah as well. Now, it's not like they made him play the entire Summer League or anything, but still, it seems like for whatever reason, Walker Kessler is not viewed in high regard by the Jazz, or at least not high enough to warrant a starting spot. And that could be play style. That could be a number of different factors. But what do you ultimately do with him? If he's not happy and has a legitimate case for why he should be a starter in this league and you're not starting him, do we see a move here? And then what does that move look like, given that you actually have a problem that he makes so little because he only makes $3 million this season? It's actually hard to find contracts small enough in terms of salary matching and things like that to make a move for Walker Kessler. Now, it's much easier to trade for Walker Kessler than, say, Zach LaVine or something like that. I'm not trying to paint him to be a difficult contract to trade for, but if the Jazz are looking to get any kind of a significant non-draft capital piece back, most of the guys that you would try to target with a Walker Kessler trade, you're going to have to add somebody else to Walker just to get the salaries up to where you need them to be. So I think what they do with Walker Kessler is my big question. What's the plan here for Utah and Kessler? Are you going to start playing him? Are you going to start giving him the minutes that he wants and the opportunity that he wants, or are you going to move on from him?
Yeah, mine fits into exactly what you said. Are you going to play him or are you going to move on? I'm going to go to the Clash, the old, like I'm getting old here. This was even before my time. This is more my sister's world of music-wise, but the Clash, very famous song, Should I Stay or Should I Go?
No,
Who is staying on this roster? Who's going on this roster? Other than Lauri Markkanen, you tell me anybody is moving on. They're staying. They're going to be a big part of things moving forward. They're going to be thrown into a trade. I'll even include every single one of the kids in that conversation because if there is a chance to go get a superstar that fits alongside Markkanen, they're going to go do it. And if that means, hey, a bunch of our draft picks, I made a bunch of them over the last couple of seasons. We're going to put 2, 3, 4 of them into a thing with some of the draft picks we have coming up. Let's go. So I think that's the question is who's even going to be on this roster? Never mind a year from now, by the time we get to the trade deadline.
By the trade deadline.
You know, that's going to be, I'm going to step on my next one because I know we're under the gun a little bit here time-wise. It's the same question a little bit for Portland, except I have faith guys like Scoot Henderson, Donovan Clingan will be there. So my big question is, how do you find enough minutes this year for Donovan Clingan specifically? The backcourt, I'm less concerned about. I'm only really investing my minutes in Henderson, Simons, and Sharp. There's enough minutes for all three of those guys to play. You'll figure that out if they're all there. They don't really have a super duper young wing that I'm like, that's the guy. We got to go do it. Dede Avdija is going to play no matter what. I'm not worried about that one. But up front, you've got Ayton, you've got Clingan, and you have Rob Williams coming back healthy. How are you going to make sure those guys play? Maybe Portland says, it doesn't matter. We're going to lose anyway. We could play 2 of the 3 bigs together for some minutes each game. Even if the minutes go horrible, what difference does it make? They're probably not going to go well anyway. But you just want to make sure it's not in a weird spot where it's like, hey, Donovan Clingan, you're only going to be spotting up in the corner because what's he getting out of that? Right? You're going to play on-ball defense entirely because we're going to let Ayton sit back at the rim and drop coverage. Like, it's just although the minutes can go bad and we can hand wave them away saying they'll go bad anyway, you don't want them to go bad in a way that's not productive. If they are Donovan Clingan's doing things and learning as he goes, great. But that's my big thing is how are you going to get enough minutes for him to get there? Ultimately, I know the answer is it'll resolve itself with a trade. But what is that going to look like? Where's that going to go? How's that going to play out? Those are all, we can't answer that today here in the middle of September. We don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that, I mean, that basically is what I was going to say for Portland as well. It's when is the trade coming? At some point, I think it makes sense for them to move on from some of these guys, Jeremy Grant, Simon, what you talked about. So there's moves to be made for this Blazers roster. Just the question is, when is it coming? There's certainly not going to be a fun watch. I think this there's some young players you can keep an eye on and all of that, but they've got young talent here. You've got kind of a few veterans sprinkled in. At some point, they're going to move on from those guys. And so again, the question for the Blazers, it's when does that trade finally hit? And what does that look like?
Yeah. Barring a major surprise, Portland's going to be bad this year.
Yeah.
If they're anything but one of the worst teams, maybe the worst team in the West, I think we'd be completely shocked. What's going to bug me is, at least until a trade happens, there's nothing more to be learned about Jeremy Grant. That's not a bad thing. Jeremy Grant's a good player. I think he'd be great on all kinds of teams, but I don't need to watch Jeremy Grant play anymore because I'm not going to learn anything about him. I just want to see the kids. Like, I don't need to learn any more about DeAndre Ayton. I know what DeAndre Ayton is as a player. I think I'm probably still higher on DeAndre Ayton than 99% of the people whose last name isn't Ayton. I still think he can actually play and play on a good team. I don't need to watch him play on a bad team because I already know what he is. He's not, I mean, unless he comes out and starts running the offense like Jokic, which would stun me, I'm not going to learn anything. So I want to see the kids because those are the guys that, all right, what does Klingon look like? What does Scoot Henderson with a full year under his belt with a real chance to run this offense? What does that look like? What is Shaden Sharp's first 2 years have been very messy because of injuries and inconsistent role and all that. What does he look like in year 3? Those are the guys I want to see, and I'm just afraid there's roadblocks right now to getting as much of that as I want. And I'm sure a lot of Blazers fans are there as well. I do radio in Portland very regularly, and they're like, we just want to watch the young guys. Like we're kind of over the veteran guys because they're not going to be a part of whatever we are when we're good again. So exactly. let's see. They're a sneaky early trade team for me. Maybe, what seems like every year we get one of those kind of early season trades now. They may be one of those ones where we get one a little earlier than expected.
It's a good call. Yeah, they could be a team to fire off an early trade. All right. I don't know if tomorrow, because we'll be doing our front office Friday tomorrow. We'll do that live. Can't say for sure whether or not we'll get into the Southwest Division tomorrow. Not, I guess it depends on how many questions and comments and things we get.
Sure.
But the next time we do the one big question, whether it's on tomorrow's live show, otherwise we'll do it on Monday's next show. But we will continue on with our one big question. We've got 2 divisions down, and we got one more Western Conference division. Then we'll head east and start taking a look at those teams. But thank you, everybody, for joining. We ran out of time for scheduled nonsense. Maybe we'll have some nonsense tomorrow on.
I'm sure we'll have time
on Front Office Friday. We always we always throw in a little bit of nonsense for our live show. But come join us tomorrow. We'll be live. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you get notified when we go live. We'll hang out and we'll talk some NBA basketball. Till then, everybody, see ya and stay safe.